Okay. Let's make this full screen.
All right.
Oh, yay, you're not muted.
Oh, good. No, I'm not muted. I'm not muted. I'm just quiet.
Yes. So everyone, it's a little quiet right now because it takes people to catch on to get on today. I am interviewing Brihtwulf. He is a variety streamer, content creator. If you haven't followed him, make sure to follow him. He's amazing. I'm also going to make sure to put these videos up on on my YouTube channel straight away because I really wanted to get some material out for people that might not watch Twitch, might watch YouTube instead. So,
Awesome.
welcome. Thank you for coming in today.
Yeah, thanks for having me here. I really appreciate it. It's a fun topic, actually. I'm glad to be a part of it.
Yes. So this week we are celebrating. Hey, Flying. Flying says hello, Britt.
All right. Yeah, I gotta watch. Yeah, there we go. Okay, now I can see the chat.
Okay, great. So we are celebrating what's called National Library Week. It happens once a year. It's promoted by the American Library Association. It's about promoting, thinking about, discussing library usage. And the theme this year changed a little bit due to, we all know, the coronavirus. So let me bring that up real quick. National Library Week. I should have had that in front of me. Ha! 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 Ah, there we go. Let's see what we can see. All right. National Library Week. See, it changed from, let me see, find your place at the library to find the library at your place. So you don't have to leave your house to find the library.
Thanks.
So, yeah. So let's get started. And you saw the set of questions.
I did, yes.
Okay,
I'm
so
prepared for
you're
various questions.
prepared.
It was nice of you to give them ahead of time, so I wasn't surprised. And you weren't grilling me about my membership to the Nazi Party or something. And why are you a communist?
You're the
Why
last
not? I don't
person.
know.
You're like, what's that membership card? What do I see in your wallet? All right, so my first question for you, which I'm going to ask, I've been speaking to Skyrim Grandma as well, and she didn't like the memory questions, so I'm not going to be asking her those.
Oh,
So,
all right. Hey, no worries.
so what is your first memory of a library?
My first library memory was in my elementary school. So I grew up in a very small town in northern Michigan that did not have a library, no public library of any kind. But my elementary school, which was the only school in the area, did have a library. And it was actually really a neat little library. It was our school itself was round, which is unusual. And so the library at the center of the school was literally the heart of the school. At the very center of the building in this circle was a library. And then outside was a big walkway and then classrooms like wheel spokes all around the outside edge. So it was really neat. And so anywhere you went and every day you came in and out of your classroom, there was the library right in the center of that. And that is the first memory I have and the first library I ever saw. And I thought it was interesting. I grew up in a poor family that didn't have a lot of books, and I had maybe one or two children's books, but this had so many of them, and I thought it was pretty cool.
So how was the feeling like how did you feel walking into the library? Like what was the
Well, frankly, it was
sensations?
overwhelming. I had never seen so many books, and I didn't know what to do with them, where to find things, why they were in different sections. I mean, I didn't understand how any of it meant. I was probably 6, 7 years old, and I found it all very cool and interesting, but also confusing because it's just this massive books, and as a little kid, you have no idea what any of that means.
So did it feel like a bit overwhelming?
Definitely. I mean, I you could see some of some books were out, so you could pick them up and look at them, but a lot of it was just shelves and shelves and shelves of books, very typical of a lot of libraries. And so still learning to read, still learning what everything is. I didn't know what books were what, which ones were for me as a little kid, and which ones were for bigger kids. I eventually learned all of that, obviously, but my first memories and my first encounter of a library was very like wow, but also whoa, this is
So
crazy.
did it feel like intimidating? Did the layout not feel as inviting as you would have hoped? I mean, looking at it now.
I don't think the layout was. I think it was the massive amount of books. Like I said, I'd never seen so many books in one place, and I actually found the layout of it, because it was so open, at least in my school, it was relatively comfortable. And they had, little chairs set up for all us little kids, and they had some little bean bags and stuff. So the environment itself I found somewhat inviting. It was just the confusing mass of books that initially kind of made me overwhelmed by it.
Oh,
Didn't know what to
okay.
do.
I mean, that's something in library school that we discuss and we look at is the layout.
Hmm.
And sometimes libraries can feel very overwhelming, especially to children. That's the reason why libraries are broken up into sections, so that like the children's area, for instance, should be more inviting, more open. And the way
Right.
they've kind of changed libraries from what they were before is like now they try to make sure that the shelving is at the height of the child versus feeling like there's
It's
a
high.
mountain.
Yeah, and that's what it felt to me. It was like this wall of books. It was scary,
Right.
you
So
know.
there's all these really cool ways that they're rebuilding, like the children's sections of libraries, that they're more open, more laid out. There's more
Hmm.
like little seats and stuff like that for people to come together, and also
Yeah.
to keep from that feeling. 'Cause I remember that as a child. Like I remember my first time going into library as a kid, and I loved it. It was just like I can have all of this, and I didn't
Yeah.
feel like I was going to have difficulty with that. I mean, it was difficult, especially for me as a child, because I was actually in foster care. So, like, being able to go to a library was a very unique and
It was
amazing
special.
experience, special experience. And that was my first time. Well, actually, it was when I was with my grandma at one point, and she took me in, and it was a Santa Clara library in California, and it was amazing. I loved walking in, and they had a little nook area for children to read and everything, and I loved it. So I can relate to that, and it can feel intimidating at times.
Yeah,
So
I think the second library was actually worse because it was so uncomfortable. And in this, I'm speaking about like the seating and things like that. It was so uncomfortable. It was like sitting in a classroom chair. It was those like hard wood or hard plastic
yes.
chairs, flat tables. And I found that library in the second elementary school I went to once my little town ran out of class space. That was less pleasant. Just the environment itself. I mean, it was still walls of books, which meant library, but the seats were all hard, and it wasn't fun to sit in, as a little kid.
Right. And Flying makes a note of something too. He says, "I hadn't realized that the shelves definitely got shorter." All right, so I can't help myself. I absolutely love Mighty Python. I'm a geek.
Right with you. No complaints here.
Well, thank you for the host. So, what Flying was mentioning is that when I was just discussing how libraries were changing and how they were trying to be more centered around user specific needs,
Hmm.
Flying pointed out something as well, that the shelves definitely got shorter in the children's sections of the library near him because things started changing. I don't know if it was like because I was a child of the 80s. I'm a Generation X. I assume you are too.
Knights,
You
I
got
bid
it.
you welcome to your new
Oh, here we
home.
go. I'm getting
Let us ride
to
to
Camelot.
When knights around.
Hey, thank you.
I just look older than I am, but I'm not that old. I am not, in fact, Sassy Gamer Lady's grandfather, ladies and gentlemen. I may look like her grandfather, but I'm not.
Brief musical intermission, as Flying said. That's wonderful, Tharfina. Thank you for the host as well. I appreciate it. So, I mean, I'm a child of the 80s. you're a child of the 80s, aren't you?
Yep.
Okay, you remember the 80
Got my
morning
whole
cartoons.
childhood in there.
Yeah.
Yes, of course. Captain Caveman.
So I mean, if you walk into a library today, for instance, in the children's section, I think it's a lot different than what it used to be, basically. When's the last time you went into a library that had and you saw the children's section?
I sort of like glanced in the one that we have in downtown Grand Rapids, the main library we have here, but it's sectioned off, like it's its own kind of room.
Yes.
I didn't really have reason to. I mean, it was more appealing visually. It looked more comforting and fun than the rest of the library. That's what I noticed, but I obviously didn't like go sit in there and pick up some Dr. Seuss. So I don't have
Come on, Brihtwulf, what's
unlimited
wrong with
firsthand
you?
knowledge. Would you with a cat? No, I didn't check it out, but it looked a lot nicer and more fun than it used to.
Okay, so that's something that I was learning, and while I'm doing my degree, I'm finishing it up. I'll be done actually at the end of August, and that's about changing the perception of libraries. Not only changing the perception by promoting libraries and doing good marketing, but it's also about changing
The inside, right?
the perception that librarians have within themselves and how they see things, like making things that are more user specific and user centric is a term that I think is important to acknowledge as well. All right, so these are good questions. Why do you like libraries?
I like that there's so much information there. There's so much knowledge there. And that is what I liked about libraries. I always felt them after not being a kid anymore and going into like some public libraries a little bit later in my life, which I started doing, more junior high age, 12 years old and such, non-school libraries. I felt they were kind of imposing. Not only are they very, very quiet, which obviously is necessary if people are reading, but most of the libraries I visited had a like a museum-like quality, almost like a
Don't touch anything.
cold,
Shush.
don't touch, unpleasant, unwelcoming. Unwelcoming was a general feeling, but I always loved, and that's one thing I think, could definitely change, like you were saying, but I've always really loved the fact that, like, before the internet, that was where you got information from. You had resources, encyclopedia, access to nonfiction, fiction alike. And so if I wanted to learn about something that wasn't from my school lessons, I was a big enough nerd that I was willing to go to the library to do it, even though it was kind of a coldish type place. I still loved the fact that, like, oh, you want to read about witches? Well, there's a section over there about witches in Salem and stuff, more than you learned in school. There's so many more books than this one that they gave you in that class. And that was something that was awesome. Oh, they don't offer French lessons in your school. Guess what? We've got like 10 different books that teach you French. And that was awesome because I always wanted to learn more stuff. And there's just all the learning, you have much access to things.
Well, if you remember, like, you mentioned the reasons why you like libraries. Do you like how libraries are looking at recategorizing and changing libraries to be more like a bookstore? It's called like a bookstore theme. Do you think that would make the library more likable and more approachable? Or
I do actually. I think that not only setting but an organization change. It just the Dewey Decimal System is great and it organizes stuff, but it also just kind of might be too complicated for what is useful for the majority of people. It sort of creates a system that's nerd centric, not to like offend my own people here, but unless like I remember when I was in the library and I was a kid, you always had the kid that had somebody asking where this book is. Well, that was me. Like, I understood the system and the Dewey Decimal System. And so most of the other kids, probably 80-90%, really didn't quite grasp it. So they're always coming to me, hey, where's this book on Pocahontas going to be? Oh, well, it's in this section. So I was the one left doing that. I think that the system just is a little complicated and people more understand a setting like you might get in a Barnes and Noble. And not only that, I feel like that visually and comfort level is so much better. You've got things like cushy chairs and
Definitely.
couches and prettier shelves and stuff like that. So it just feels more warm and inviting, and a place where I could sit down, have a coffee, and actually relax and enjoy my setting, rather than sitting at, again, a flat wooden table with a flat wooden chair that after 30 minutes
You're
feels like I
just
have
like,
a
I'm
flat wooden
done.
butt. Yeah, I don't want to do that.
I'm
I'm not
done.
having fun sitting there.
That doesn't feel like it's very involved or warm or making you want to stay. It's like,
No,
okay, get your
no.
books and leave.
Right. And the last time I was at our public library, the main one downtown, it's beautiful. Oh my God, it's just a lovely building. It looks like I don't know, it looks almost like a cool museum, stone and everything from the outside. And you go in, and it's nice architecturally inside. But again, all the seats, all the tables are like I'm sitting in a really old banquet hall with crappy wooden chairs. And it's just not inviting or comfortable. It does feel almost like get your books and get out.
I
And
mean,
so,
yeah.
that's probably my one complaint about modern libraries is just it doesn't feel like a place you want to kind of hang out in, and it should be. I think it should.
Yeah. And that's part of, like, when I was talking about my collection development class that I took this over this 2 years. It's all blurring together. One of the things that you have to look at in collection development isn't just about collecting items. It's about, like, one of the philosophies that my professor had was that you should build a collection where there's no books. Like, not no books. Like, they're checked out so much and so frequently that there's no books on the shelves because they're all being used. That's the type of that's the type of collection you want to build. But also, it wasn't just about getting the right items or having the right digital library sense as well. It was also about creating a space that people want to use, because the biggest argument in library school right now is it's about going away from the preconceptions that libraries are just a warehouse for books. And that's the reason why a lot of libraries are looking at making it more of, like, what you're talking about, a community space. They have a coffee shop, like, that you can get a coffee at.
Right? How awesome is that? Like, that's like step up right there.
Yeah,
and coffee in there.
Yeah, and there's a whole, like, I can't think of the term, but basically it's like you were saying, it's like it's called, like, making it like a book. It's like it's bookstore theory is what it is. Is like setting up a library to look like a bookstore. That includes displays, because the library I worked at, I had a lot of issues where people weren't displaying certain things. Like, I had worked really hard on creating the graphic novel collection, and when I was no longer working there, I had people tell me, well, nobody checks these books out anymore. I'm like, well, do you advertise them on social media? Do you set up displays?
Are they
well,
displayed?
no. And it's like, you can have the best collection in the world, but if you're not promoting that collection, if you're not making it accessible, if you're not marketing that collection, if you're not, like, housing the collection in a way that people feel invited, and that also means, the user space is a place that, like you said, people want to sit down, they want to grab a coffee, they want to stay. They don't want to just sit in a wood chair that's so uncomfortable.
Hurt their bum, yeah.
Yeah, so that's a lot of what was going on too during my degree. That changing that space is important too. All right,
And that whole, like, warehouse thought, if I can interject on that for 1 minute, that's also something that I've always kind of felt, especially about older libraries. It seems like a lot of them are often unwilling to bring in new stuff too. Like, you'll go to their fiction section, for example, and let's say you want to read fiction, but I'm seeing books that are like 30 years old, and that's like the newest thing they've got. And so I often wondered, well, I don't know how libraries obtain books, whether it's, and it probably varies from one to another, but whether they're purchased or whether they're gotten from publishers at some deal or whether they're donated, I don't know. But I often would get sort of disenfranchised, disheartened a little bit by going in and finding all this dated material, just dated 1950s, 1960s. Like, libraries were really important back in the 50s and 60s, and they got all these awesome new books. And then in the 70s and 80s, everybody said, forget it.
Well, I'll tell you what the problem is. Every library they should have two policies. You have your overall library policy that includes, like, your mission statements, your goals, what who your library is for, what is it serving, what is its purpose, and also it's like rules and guidelines to go. If you come across a library that has books that are 50 years old, and we're not talking about special collections here. That's totally a different subject.
Like, that's the standard. It's just old
right.
stuff.
You're dealing with a library that has what's called an outdated collection policy. All libraries should have an actual collection policy. And in that collection policy, it outlines how long they keep books for. Like, you should keep science books for so many years. You should keep fiction for so many years. You should keep children's books for so many years. And that if you have a efficient library, they're following the policies of that collection development to keep that collection relevant for their community. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people or librarians that tend to stay, like, they're from the old school concepts and ideas of the library, and that's like, we just keep everything forever. But it's inefficient to do that, and it creates this disconnect that you're referring to and what you're saying. It's like you want a collection that people are going to check out, that they're going to use, they're going to be super interested in, and that is part of following that collection policy. And it's called weeding, by the way. It's when you go, and it's just like a garden. And this is the best analogy, because that's what librarians call it. They have, if you're a really good library, you weed your library at least once a year.
Take out the unwanted things.
Yeah, like Flying is saying over here, he's like, it's good to freshen up your library. You want fresh new materials. You want to give reasons for people to want to come in and check things out and use these things.
Now, this topic gives me a thought of a question for you. You mind if I interject your questioning with my own question?
I love it, Brihtwulf. That's why I wanted to interview you, because you're great.
Right. So my thought is, when I consider things like technology, there's a really heavy generational divide or gap, whatever you want to call it. But for example, our parents are often technologically inept. They don't quite get their phones or computers or the internet in general and things like that.
My
Do you
dad.
feel like this is a turning point for libraries because of that same reason? Because right now, my assumption is that mostly older people are the ones making these policies, the ones in charge. Do you think now that you're going to be moving your way into that more professionally now, is this a change of the guards?
It is. It is a change of the guards. It is the time of Generation X, because we are the, I would call it like this, I think it's been referred to like the sandwiched generation. We have the boomer parents, there's the millennials, there's Generation X, and then there's
in the middle.
And there's the Zoomers, but we were brought up with technology. You know, I remember in school, remember the Apple computers?
Oh yeah, and the little Apple IIGSs and stuff. Yep.
Remember Oregon Trail?
Yeah.
Died of dysentery.
Yeah.
That's the real killer here.
I got tuberculosis too. Yeah, bad stuff.
Yeah. So and so here we go from, like, Thorfina makes a perfect point. She says, as a kid in the 90s, I only found books from about the 1950s to the 1980s. And I think you're right. I think a lot of it is a generational issue. And while I've been studying, I'm always the biggest thing that, because my whole degree is through San Jose State University, which is they've had a library program since 1910. And they were one of the first schools to do an online degree, because mine is completely online. And one of the biggest things that they push for, so I've done everything through online, through Canvas. It's like, Canvas is this like thing that you use to do all of your schooling and discussion, stuff like that. So that forced me to have to learn technology. But I've noticed, and I believe this with Generation X, we pick up technology fast, because we had to watch.
It was around. Yeah, it developed.
Yeah, it developed really fast between like the 1980s and now, and we're constantly having to stay up to date with it. Like, I only the last couple of years got on Twitter. I was on Facebook, but I remember MySpace.
Yeah. And I think we're the first generation that's like that. So I think you might say Generation X, Y, whatever, right in the middle there, we're kind of the first generation of the modern era. Like,
I agree.
The industrial generations are what we're dealing with before us. And so it's going to be people like you who are going to be responsible for bringing libraries out of the industrial era and into
Yeah.
the modern era, the era of technology.
I agree, and I mean
Big responsibility.
that's one of my emphases right now. It's just like thinking about, and that's an emphasis on San Jose State University with is about future trends. Like you should always be thinking about
Be
future
ready.
trends.
That's good.
You know, because you have to be like when you look at technology, like just to bore you a little bit. The way cataloging is done right now, it's through these things called MARC records, but pretty soon they want to get rid of that. So basically, you just scan the back of a book and it just instantly enters the record into your collection versus having to have a dedicated cataloger to enter the information through MARC records, which people pull up through this thing called OCLC. But I won't get too technical.
It's a whole long process, but they want to streamline.
Yes.
Cool. Yeah. I think
That's
stuff like that's going to be super important. So you've got your work cut out for you.
I know. Because, you know, the biggest hurdle you have to overcome really is when you walk in and you're like, okay, I want to make changes. And they're like, you know, this is the way we've been doing it since.
The old-fashioned ways are the best, Missy. Yeah.
And I'm just like. So I had that.
Pull out your card catalog and look for the card of that book.
Yes, I remember those. Remember looking up books at the card catalog?
Yep, that was how it did, and that's how it was done.
That's definitely how it was done. So, yeah, there's a lot to discuss there, but I'm going to move on to question 3. What are your top 5 favorite books and why?
This was actually really hard until I like stopped sort of trying to restrict myself, and I said, all right, I'm gonna look like a kind of a weirdo a little bit because my top favorite books are from like such a variety of areas, and I realized that the reason is back to that whole thing of I just, you know, I love knowledge and so many broad things. One of my favorite books, I do really enjoy fiction. I'm predominantly a fiction reader. I don't do a lot of like historical reading or anything. So I like fiction a lot, but I like a variety of it. So Queen of the Damned by Anne Rice.
Oh, really?
Fantastic. Yeah. I really enjoy her descriptiveness. I enjoy the emotion of the stories. And in that particular book from the Vampire Chronicles, it gets really heavily into this cool, like ancient Egyptian history storytelling thing, and I just absolutely loved it. But I also enjoy other fiction. Douglas Adams' Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is another one of my top favorite books. He is also really good with descriptiveness, but in this sense, it's not serious. It's not romance or drama or anything. It's humor. It's just absolutely hilarious. And he's so clever, and I really appreciate that. So very different things, but some of my favorites. Another favorite story of mine, which adds in almost like this philosophical bend, which is a little side interest of mine, is Wizard's First Rule by Terry Goodkind. If you are familiar with that book.
Yes! I love the Sword of Truth series.
Yes, Sword of Truth books. That is like right up there to the
Super
top.
strong female characters in there, like
yes, she's so
Kalan,
awesome,
or I'd call her Kaylin. Kaylin or Kalan.
So awesome. And it's just really well written, detailed, well fleshed out characters are always really important to me.
I agree.
And these stories that develop the characters beyond their actions has always been important to me. Understanding the emotions, motivations, and mindset of characters has always been important to me. So that's one thing in Wizard's First Rule. But it also, like I said, does talk about things like social equalities and the battles of the lower classes. Just like all these really cool things in a
very underlying themes. And that was yeah, that was always a big problem I had. Like the library I worked at, they had like their fantasy collection was horrific. It was, and they just saw no value. They're like, there's just no value in fantasy and science fiction. And I'm like,
yeah, absolutely not true. I mean, and look at some of the most brilliant science fiction authors like Isaac Asimov, who was also a brilliant scientist himself. It just, I think what it does, and what all literature does, and particularly fiction, is it grows your ability to imagine. It grows your mind. Even if you're not
I
learning new
agree.
stuff from it, it's not teaching you math. It's not teaching you science. Reading things like Frankenstein, reading things like Dracula, they're expanding kind of your mental capacity and your understanding of humans and the human experience. And I think that's really important. Again, I'm more of a fiction reader, but I do like some nonfiction. When I do, it sort of goes into some philosophical things. I'm a one of my favorite books. This is probably my favorite nonfiction is Marcus Aurelius's Meditations.
Beelan says hi.
Hey, Balin, what's going on, man?
Hey,
You
Beelan.
can't stop him. He's here. Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, fantastic piece of ancient philosophical writing. So that's
Oh,
like
that sounds
one of the
interesting.
nonfiction things. Yeah, it's really good. It talks a lot, and this is written by the Emperor of Rome, circa 300, 350 AD. And it basically is his memoirs. He's kind of looking back on his life as, in my opinion, one of, if not the greatest and wisest emperor in the Roman Empire, in the history of the Roman Empire. And he's talking about all the things that he has learned and what he understands as valuable and not valuable in life. And
Mm.
it's amazing sort of how down to earth this emperor is, but also how pertinent a lot of the things that he thinks are to our lives today. He's not talking about like work and psychology and all that. He's talking about just being a human. And that's something
That sounds
I
really
find
good.
very
Could you send me the link on that book?
yeah, absolutely. There's some great translations and stuff out there too.
Because I'm a history
Um,
major too, so I've got a master's
oh,
in history
I
as
was
well.
really heavily into classics. I read, I had a minor in classics in college, and I read just so much Greek philosophy and Greek literature and drama and everything. It was a big passion of mine. It's really just awesome stuff.
See, this is why these interviews are so good. I get to learn more about you.
Yeah,
Yay!
everybody has different tastes and different knowledge of writing. So yeah, so those three fiction, the one nonfiction, and obviously I cannot talk about fiction, and I cannot also pick a best writing, but I have to mention Tolkien. I mean, J.R.R.
Yes!
Tolkien. That
Yay!
like, if I picked
Tolkien!
a favorite story, is The Hobbit better than The Fellowship of the Ring? I don't know, but they're
I
both
just
awesome.
I just feel
Um,
like it's like when I read The Lord of the Rings, I felt like it really was one book.
yes, it felt so epic and connected that it doesn't feel like separating it made sense. I mean, if you could say The Lord of the Rings, I would put that above The Hobbit. But yeah, so we'll call The Lord of the Rings one book, and I'll put that as my other favorite.
Okay. That sounds fair. So was that
Yeah, and
5 or was that 4?
again for that reason, again fantasy stories, extremely developed characters, thoughtful, emotional plots. And the awesome linguistic edition of all of his cool Elven and Dwarven speaking and everything. That is phenomenal. I do really like languages. I find them to be fun little puzzles. So I kind of gravitate toward his writings for that reason too.
I mean, he's a like Tolkien is fascinating because he was in England, of course, and he fought in World War One.
Yep.
And a lot of people don't realize, like in the books. Hey, Ali, welcome in. I'm interviewing Brihtwulf. He's another content creator. Should definitely give him a follow. A lot of people don't realize that Tolkien was in World War One, and part of the reason why a lot of the battles in the actual books, like what happens is the hobbits just get like hit over the head and they pass out and they wake up and it's over, is because he doesn't really want to relive that. Like he was in this
Yeah.
really bad battle. I think it was in France, and it was just horrific what happened. And one of the things I love about Tolkien, and I look at hobbits now versus like retrospectively, because I lived in England for 10 years and I lived in North Yorkshire, and he is from North Yorkshire. So like this whole concept and idea behind people living in the earth and having a laugh and, you know, going to the pub and all of that is really the culture of North Yorkshire and England.
So it's like home, and that's
Yes.
why it is portrayed that way. That's really
Yeah.
cool.
And a lot of people don't realize that. And like, I lived in Harrogate. If you want to look that up, Harrogate or York is all up in North Yorkshire. And especially in Harrogate, it's like you see these rolling hills and you see sheep everywhere. And it was just a lovely, lovely experience. And like going on a walk was a big deal. It was like an adventure in a lot of ways. You
Love
see all the
walking and I love little walking adventures and stuff like that. So
yeah, because like even in Yorkshire they have these things they're called snickets, and people aren't allowed to cut the snicket off for people, so they can walk through people's like property and fields for miles.
oh,
You didn't know that?
that's really cool.
taught
No,
you
I did not know that. That's neat.
So yeah, I went on a rant there.
I think one of the things that you could probably find true about my feelings on literature in general, and this isn't about libraries, but I think one of the downfalls of some more modern literature is it is less elevated. I mean, look, a lot of things are less elevated than Tolkien,
Right.
but I think a lot of modern literature has not necessarily that it's bad, but it's become less elevated. There's a lot of like purant, sexual, and violent things in a lot of new literature.
Obviously,
I don't know
I'm
if
not
it's
reading
because-
that.
Yeah, I don't know if it's because people haven't really gravitated as much to the standard styles of literature, but I am not very enticed by like just gross vulgar stuff. And I know
Me either.
erotic is huge; it's a huge thing, but I'm certainly not into that. And then stuff that's like really violent and gory and talking about how someone dies in great detail and like disgusting ways, and I'm like, yeah, that
No,
kind of stuff is not for me.
definitely not.
I don't even know what role that type of material may or should have in libraries. I suppose I could leave that question for you. Where
Oh,
does
God.
erotica fall? What section in the library does erotica go in?
Oh my
Where's
gosh. Will,
Twilight and 50 Shades of Grey in the library? If we're looking for that, where can I find it?
well, if it's in the Dewey system, it's going to be sectioned based off of like topic.
Right. So if I'm
So-
looking for Sylvia and the Salty Sailor, can you tell me where I can find it? I've made this awkward now. I can tell my job is done.
You broke me. I was just like, oh boy. No, like in the Dewey system, usually if it's fiction, it's just put
Just
in
in
the
fiction.
fiction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do
Don't
you think
think
modern libraries should or will include things like erotica or ultra-violent fiction? Do you think?
see.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, the thing is like libraries are the importance, and there's a constant pressure about censorship. So say for instance like and that kind of stuff isn't
It's for the masses. It's for everybody, right? The library should
Exactly.
be for everyone.
well, and this stems from the fact, like back to what I was saying about collection development policies. You can choose to have a collection development policy that's like, we're focusing on X, Y, and Z. So if like, let's say I have to look at doing let's say I walk into a new library and they don't have a collection development policy. The first thing I'm going to have to do is like a look at the demographics of the area. I have to look at who is using the library. I mean, this is the thing that always comes up in discussions, especially with like fiction, is like, we don't need 50 million James Patterson books. Do you know who James Patterson is?
Yeah, and like those authors just sort of crank out mundane
Murder mysteries.
Right,
Do we
over and
need
over
50?
again.
So like a perfect example of this is I'm
Tom
part of
Clancy and
Yes, I'm part of a library meme on Facebook. It's hilarious. I mean, like it's library meme page, and there was a meme of it was because of COVID-19. Libraries have funny humor. A lot of people don't realize that, but we're hilarious and we like to drink. So that's something people should know. So there was a picture of James Patterson, like his face, and there was a comment above it because it was a meme saying, "Do you miss me now?" And everybody was like, no.
it's funny, like even librarians kind of think, yeah, this stuff is kind
Right.
of
So like a librarian said, well, in their collection development policy, they have a policy that if a new James Patterson book gets put on the shelf, one comes off.
Taking another one off. Okay.
So you
'Cause
could
popular doesn't necessarily mean good, right? I mean, so you
exactly.
have to balance that out. Are you going to have a bunch of popular stuff, or do you care about the quality of your collection too?
Because that's a big debate when you're looking at budget and financing. It's like
Mm.
everybody's going to want that new Jane Patterson book coming out, but are you really going to buy 10 copies?
Right.
Is that going to have
That's the
sustainability when your kids section needs books too? Or you have people who require ESL, they speak or read different languages. You need to think about a part of that collection development area or part of your policy to incorporate. That's the reason why, like, if you're looking at a collection development, like I said, you first look at the demographics. You look at who lives in the area. You look at, you look at race and ethnicity. You look at all these. You look at the demographics with income. I mean, you got to look at meeting the needs of a whole community, not the person that wants the next Jane Patterson book.
Yeah,
You know?
that's a good point. I mean, even here in Michigan, where I live, we have a very large Hispanic population, so you may want more books in Spanish. On the eastern part of the state, closer to Detroit, you have more Asian and Middle Eastern, so less Spanish, and maybe you want to get some, Japanese or Korean books, or maybe some books in Arabic or something. It's going to vary from one place to another, I suppose.
Yeah, and that's the reason
I
why
didn't know
when
how
you
complicated that was.
yeah, that's the reason why when you look at like ALA policy, like their overall goals and roles, and any librarian, one of the things that's important to us is diversity and inclusion, because you don't want to exclude anybody. And I know this is kind of a long way to answer your question, and I can come back to that. But if you got to really think, do we want to have erotica? Is anyone really going to check that out? If our philosophy and mission statement is about, let's say, continued learning or lifelong learning, what does that have to do to meet our mission statement and our goals?
That doesn't fit.
So that's why there's two. A library should always have two policies. You have your library policy overall, so you list your mission, your goals. What is the purpose of your library? What function is it? That's the whole thing that's your library policy. On the other hand, you have to have your collection development policy to make sure that it's meeting that, right? Because then you'll end up in situations with erotica and stuff like that. And then coming back to censorship, at the same time, a lot of librarians detest racism, right? They don't want it. They believe in diversity and inclusion, but if it's a discussion and it's something, it's like there's a lot of debate. It's like, is it censorship not to have those kind of books in our library?
Yeah, that's one thing I think is a difficult question, is where does social responsibility end up conflicting with freedom and wanting to offer various viewpoints and things like that? I mean, where does a book about Nazism and behaviors in World War II cross a line into being offensive to Jewish people, for example? I mean, you have to watch that line really closely, and frankly,
Yes.
I'm glad I'm not the one in charge of deciding that.
And so that's where
Sounds like a nightmare.
I mean, and that's the reason why that was the first thing, like at the beginning of this whole conversation, understanding library policies and collection development policies are so vital and important, because it even goes back to when you said you went into a library and they had books that were like 50 years old because they're not following.
Do you think we need a national standard? As a librarian, would you appreciate or not be happy if somebody said, we're all going to get together and create just a baseline of national standards for how long we should keep something, or what kinds of things are and aren't okay for public libraries?
Oh, well, Thorfina brings up a good point. She's like, and do you have the space to really have all these various kinds of books? That's another part of a collection development policy.
Yeah.
Like I said with the Patterson book, how this one person developed it like, well, if you put one new one on, one comes off. Because
You're space maintaining and keeping that one person not saturating your books.
Well, I see what you're saying about a national policy. I mean, each library has its own policy, but every library tries its best to stay within the ALA guidelines.
Okay, so there already is a sort of guideline policy that they're following. And
Guidelines.
Yeah. Do you feel like that's sufficient? Do you feel like that they do a good job of maintaining those guidelines, or are you seeing like a need for further
I
advancement?
think the biggest problem comes back to the generational thing we were talking
Right.
about, where we have
So
these
in 10
people
or
that
20
need to
years, those guidelines
retire
might be completely,
so I
might be
can have a
completely different.
job and
Yeah.
come in and fix your
Get out of here.
problems.
You need to retire, Susan. Get out of here.
It's like that's and I came across this problem in my previous employment. I was telling you about it. I worked at, and I think I've told people about it anyways. I worked at a library on a military base, and the librarian in charge. And like the funny thing was is like my first year at library school, I spent almost the first year, you have to make a lot of comparisons. Like they want you to write about a local library compared to what you should be doing versus what you shouldn't be doing. And this library was a seething pile of everything you shouldn't do.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, so like, and I learned every which way not to manage a library, every which way not to do a collection development. Like they had no collection development policy to start with. They had books that were that, like you said, had been there for 50 years. They were using science books in a children's area that looked like it came out of the 80s. I mean,
They referred to the liberation of slaves as trouble ahead.
it was bad. And then you have you. Then they weren't thinking about the patrons they're supposed to serve. So it's a military library. However, it is a community-based military library. But the number one priority and the reason why they receive funding from the DoD, Department of Defense, sorry, I'm going to start throwing in acronyms because I'm used to it, was for the troops, for the active duty military members. And a lot of that was about promoting their career advancement. So we had a lot of CLEP books and stuff like that. Yeah. But this librarian was atrocious. She would order books, not look at, she would order books, not look at what was already in the collection before she ordered them. We get duplicates of books that nobody was checking out. Okay. It's like with any ILS, which is integrated library system, is what the checking in and checking out policy, or like the circulation desk. It's like it's the system for doing all of that. You can run statistical reports to grasp, okay, how many times has this book been checked out in the last 5 years? If it hasn't been checked out in the last 5 years, it probably needs to go.
Yeah, I mean, if that's a long time where nobody cared about that book, the chances are it's not wanted.
It's not wanted. But then you can look at giving it to other places that do need it, like prisons, for instance. You can donate those books to prisons or other places that need books. So there's no reason to like necessarily throw them away, but there's always reason to think about, well, what's in your collection development policy? Are you following it? Are you being mindful of that kind of thing? Sorry, I went off on a tangent.
I like the way our library system handles it here. Once something is pulled out, they do semi-annual or annual book sales. They just have a huge book sale in 2 parts of the library.
Yes, some libraries can do that.
And they just sell off the older stuff that they don't need, which generates a little revenue, doesn't throw it away, and gets the book in the hands of someone who will read it anyway, even though it hasn't been wanted in the library. So I think that's a nice way to handle it.
Yeah, that's a great example. Like, but unfortunately, at the library I worked at, since it was government, it was considered government policy, so you couldn't do that. There's certain, it's really amazing. Like when you work for government agencies, the red tape that exists that stands in the way of doing a lot of things is a shame. So, all right, so we got off on a side note. I know, I love it. I knew Brihtwulf, you'd be great to interview.
I'm slightly known for going off on tangents. Don't worry about it.
I love it. All right. So this is a good question. What was your first, and this is a serious issue with people's preconceptions of wanting to go to libraries and talk to librarians. So what was your first experience like when you spoke to a librarian? If the first time that you can think of.
Well, again, I was a kid, and so there's always that child to adult interaction. It's sort of like going up to the teacher. You're a little apprehensive. You're a little scared of them. The librarian at my first library back in that elementary school was nice. She wasn't like super pleasant, but she wasn't one of those mean old ladies that was like, I don't care, go get the book. You know, none of that stuff. But it was a little imposing for my first interaction in a library. But luckily, She was nice and helpful. I mean, working in an elementary school, you'd figure you would be that way.
You'd hope
I
so.
have since then, however, encountered some snotty and unhelpful librarians, but I will say it's been pretty rare that I have. In most cases, they've usually been pretty friendly, pretty helpful people. Either I've gotten lucky or that's just the way it tends to be, but I just haven't had to deal with many nasty ones.
But do you think, and I mean, this is one of my things I've been thinking about, and that, libraries are struggling with now. Do you think that shaped you wanting to come back versus not? Like,
If I had gotten one of those sort of rude old ladies, I probably never would have wanted to go back in the library, never wanted to check out any of those books. And if I did, I would like avoid her because she would have scared me, especially, for little kids. I think it's really important to have someone who is capable, if not trained, to deal with children, because it is that young age where most kids, especially in school, get their first interaction with a library. And if you have an angry, jaded person,
just like,
you're going to scare them all away. Yeah. Don't ask me questions. Use the card catalog. If they're just like that, look it up yourself. I'm not your slave. You don't want to have that. I think one of the nice things that I realized, I mean, talking up my local library again here, but the Grand Rapids Public Library and the downtown one particularly, I was blown away by the young people that were working there. Absolutely blown away by just how freaking helpful they were, how nice they were. And this is a large library. This is a 4-story library.
oh wow, that sounds like
collection.
fun.
And they're, hey, go up to the desk and it's these 20s somethings, 30 somethings, and they're, hey, what can I help you with? They've got this better sort of friendly, almost customer service-esque attitude without being annoying or pushy or anything like that. But I was really surprised that they were that positive and that helpful, and that made me want to come back there more, because I'm like, well, anytime I need something,
Right.
these really awesome people will help me find exactly what I need, and that was cool. But if I had a nasty old lady the first time I tried to check out a book, I think my library experience would have definitely been different.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot of what libraries are battling, especially what has been one of my focuses, teen services and offering teen programs, because in a lot of libraries, and I've seen this across the board while I was doing my degree and while I'm still doing my degree and working with fellow colleagues on group projects and like redesigning libraries, is that teens tend to get marginalized. A lot of that has to do with the attitude that library workers have towards teens, where they're like, I just don't want to deal with teens. I don't want to talk to them. I don't want to, and that attitude puts a whole generation of people off. You don't want to just have a facility that's just for like little kids and adults. All of a sudden you got this gap.
They're getting neglected.
Yeah. Switchy Cat, thank you for the follow.
Yeah.
Oh,
and I think that in that case too, that more of that, kind of training, and also in your hiring, when you're looking for people, finding people who have the right attitude, that want to be helpful, that want to be pleasant. Because I'm sure if a local high school student went in and talked to one of those people, assuming they're just as nice to them as they were to me, you're going to encourage that teenager to come in and properly use the library responsibly and be happy about it and respect things, rather than feeding into their already existing teen angst by being snotty with them about it. And now they want to throw a rock through your library window instead of checking out books.
And that's so true. And I mean, if you look at, you can tell the libraries that marginalize teens versus the ones that don't, because they'll usually, if they marginalize teens, they will build a teen space that will be very much like not in the center library, off like in some corner, behind a bunch of tall bookshelves, no signage, because they don't want teens to actually find where their area is. It won't have an open concept. It won't have like technology, which teens thrive. They thrive off of technology. And versus on the opposite end of that, where you see people who don't marginalize teens or teens programming, and they'll have a great teen space. They'll have like Xbox there, they'll have PlayStation there, they'll have computers there, they'll have a really open area for teens to kind of like work together and congregate to each other. And then also you usually see like a really good graphic novel collection and manga collection, because that's very big with teens, not just you can't just have a bunch of books anymore.
Yeah, I think one of the things that, again, bookstores do well, and you sort of mentioned that bookstore image, they do really well with appealing to the teen crowd, with keeping the newest literature in there, keeping a good environment and a comfortable, chill, pleasant environment, putting those books near the manga and graphic novel section. You know, it's just smart. It's just smart.
Okay, this is what they call it. They call it the bookstore model.
Okay, yeah, and that I think it sounds really smart. I'd never heard of that before today, but that sounds like a really smart idea, frankly.
Yeah, my plan is by the end of the stream, people have heard new things they didn't know about.
I know I have, so step one complete.
Great. Let me see. Gildian, thank you for coming in. Good to see you. And yes, D. Krager libraries still exist. So I'm making sure I'm like listening to my chat, seeing what they have to say. It's so nice to have you here, sweetie cat. All right. So what are your favorite subjects to read? Question 6.
Well, aside from fiction, which is predominantly what I enjoy, I also like classics and philosophy. Although I will say that my philosophical reading is not as broad as some other people who are just like, hey, philosophy, nom nom nom.
Is that what it's like? Everyone's like, oh, philosophy, nom
yeah,
nom
I
nom
see
nom.
people doing that all the time. They're picking up books and shoving them in their mouths. They're like, oh, Socrates and Aristotle. This is delicious. This one tastes like grape leaves.
Really?
But
is that what that tastes?
I do enjoy philosophy, but it's a more like specific thing. I'm not some weird person that's like, what is the meaning of a chair? You know, I'm not going to discuss whether a chair is a chair with you. But when it comes to things like real life applications, thinking deeper within yourself than what your day-to-day experiences are, that type of philosophy, interpersonal interactions, dealing with the stresses in everyday life, just kind of things like that. And again, why I point to Meditations by Marcus Aurelius is an excellent read on that. And
now I want to read it.
It's really good. And a lot of ancient Greek stuff, philosophy and plays and tragedies and all that. Because interestingly enough, in classic, they often included thought-provoking and thoughtful and philosophical things within their stories, within their fiction. We do a little bit of that sometimes now, but less of it. And so that's one of the reasons I really enjoy classics. It's this sort of intellectual drama, if you will, and I appreciate it.
Switchy Cat says, it is a fantastic book.
It is, yes. I have several copies of it, the oldest being from, I want to say like the turn of the century, but again, it's from like 300 AD, so.
It's really interesting how books that are so old can still, you know, mean something sort of today. Yes.
And I mean, particularly this one, you're talking about almost 2,000 years old, and you can read the statements and the thoughts of this, like the most. By all intents and purposes, he was the most powerful human being in the world at that time, and you can read his thoughts, and they make sense and apply to today, and that's freaking amazing on its own.
I know, it makes me think of, because I studied my first master's degree was in, I have a master's of art in history and Renaissance and early modern studies. Okay. So that made me think of Thomas More.
Ah, yeah. I mean, a more modern / Renaissance philosopher and more modern time stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, Thomas
Similarities,
More.
I could definitely see that.
Like making sure it's the right Thomas More. And it made me think about one of his most popular books, Utopia.
Yep.
So, I mean, there's a lot to say about history and how important a role it plays in looking at things retrospectively. as well.
That's how we learn. Humans learn by taking the lessons of the past and applying them to now and looking to tomorrow. And without the knowledge of the past, without the lessons of the past, you can't really do that. So any information that you have that you can build upon is useful, and that's one of the reasons history is so important.
I mean, to think of that, jumping off topic, I think about like COVID-19, because I know it's a hard thing to talk about sometimes. But then I look at the plague, and it's like the plague kept coming back. So it's important to look at how past cycles and things happened and compare it to today. I mean, that's one of the...
Even in more modern history, you can look at the handling of smallpox in the 1700s and the handling of the massive tuberculosis epidemic around the world in the 1800s and early 1900s. So if we didn't know how to deal with that and we hadn't learned some lessons
Spanish
from that,
flu.
yeah, and that even that in 1918, 1917. So there's so much stuff that was going on that we've learned from. It's not just our science that functions that way. It's our society that functions that way too. And we learn a lot and we record it all through our literature. And so it's so freaking important. History, literature, it's the way to move forward with establishing that ever important base.
And I
History and
agree.
literature are the base.
Because some people will be like, why did you ever get that degree? Why did you do it? It's so worthless. And I have to explain and justify why history is so important.
Yeah, you're
if
like
we don't...
the keeper of the lore. You're like the lore keeper for the world. You are there making sure that knowledge stays available and that all of these important things are not lost. And that is why libraries are so important.
Right.
We need that to move forward because otherwise we lose our foundation without.
Oh, we have more people that joined us. Hi, Big.
Hooray!
Welcome in. Welcome in. Lovely to see you guys here. Anna Coraline's here. That's someone from my community. Yeah, so this is why I knew it'd be great to interview because we'd have a great conversation.
I'm a big nerd. I like books.
All right, so I think you covered the subjects. Do you have a local library you visit?
I talked about that. Yeah, we actually, and that's not even the one next to me. I have a library. I live in Grand Rapids, Michigan. It is a city. It is the second largest city in Michigan after Detroit. We have a population of just under 1 million in our metro area.
Wow.
And I live within the Grand Rapids area, and we have a library about half a mile from us. It's a very small one, but it is near the middle school, and it predominantly focuses on preteen kind of stuff.
So do they have a good teen program there?
I don't think they have a teen. It's more like the sort of 10 through 13. So like just the beginning of the teens.
Okay.
It's for like the junior high crowd. And
the
some of the
tweens?
elementary kids as well.
They call them the tweens.
Yeah, the tweens. The tweeners.
Yeah, there's a lot of debate
to
about
go
that too.
Exercise your tweener. But I don't go to that one.
Okay.
I go to the one downtown that's about 4 miles away, and that's the huge one that's 4 stories high and has like.
Oh, you said the good
so much
customer
stuff in it.
service, right?
It's insane. Yeah, that's the one that almost feels customer servicey, where like there's not a bunch of angry old ladies with glasses and chains hanging off of them.
I know. It's just like there's nothing that frustrates me more in the world when I see a commercial and there's your typical librarian, which is some old lady with glasses and a shawl. This is how I dress for work. This is it right here.
Nice. See how I dress for work too.
Yeah, you dress
I don't
great.
work in a library. I should work in a library. I could be the greeter.
You could be the greeter. How are you today?
May I show you to the erotica section, my lady?
Oh man, I would never put you in charge of a library policy or a collection development policy. I'd be like, no.
Totally joking.
He's like, here's our whole section on 50 Shades of Grey.
We have 700 copies of 50 Shades of Grey. Behind you is the playroom. Feel free to enter at your will.
I think I saw like a meme somewhere where people were taking the 50 Shades of Grey and like building like statues out of them or something. Because there's like nobody wants that.
It's so ridiculous.
Yes.
Yeah,
okay. That's
it's a little weird.
Right.
Yeah, I love our downtown libraries.
Good.
Really good. They've done a good job keeping it modern, keeping up with the times. So,
Future trends. What did I say?
yep.
That makes you want to come back, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it's nice. You can, get a coffee and wander around, and it's just a nice, pleasant place to be in.
So are
Just
they
don't mind the
practicing?
homeless guys that need to pee. Don't worry about it. It's fine.
Are they
We're in a
practicing
big
the?
city, so we get that.
Are they practicing the bookstore model? Do you think, or no?
No, visually, no. I think they're still kind of in a traditional library layout, where it looks a little more like just endless shelves of foreboding knowledge. Um,
Yes.
I feel like they're going that way, and they've been increasing those book sales that I've been telling you about, kind of cycling out more of the old stuff, donating away some of the really old stuff that's not worthless, but they don't want to get rid of, and then redoing it. But I don't think they're quite there yet. I don't know
Right.
who's in charge of that library, but maybe they're going through the transformative process at this point.
Swishy Cat says
do
they
have
have
some
cool
cool displays.
displays.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do have some cool displays there. But there's more room to go, and they're still doing that whole like long conference tables with wooden chairs thing, and it's just, if you want to read something, there are
Maybe
a
you
few
should put something in their
comfy chairs
suggestion
around.
box.
Yeah. Please get chairs that don't make my butt hurt. Thank you.
Or go numb.
Yeah. I can't feel my anus. Someone help me. Call the hospital. I need an ambulance.
Okay, see you later, Gildian. Thank you for coming in. A Swishy Cat says, do you remember the artifacts on the 4th floor? Artifacts. Tell me about it.
Yes, they have some really, really super old stuff on display on the top
I
floor.
love how you
where-
categorize it as just super old stuff.
super old stuff. Some of them are books. Some of them are little like historical keepsakes, relics. They'll have like little pieces of like machinery. This was displayed in the mayor's office in 1704 or whatever. I don't know.
Oh dear.
But just silly old things, and it's cool. It looks cool though. It's all the way up on like where the city records and stuff are kept. They have some like historical city leftovers.
Stuff.
Yeah, Switchy's super into antiques, which is why we're married. But
Because you're an
yeah.
antique?
yes, precisely. But it's a cool library, regardless. I do enjoy it. The one near us, not so much because it's not tailored to me.
Right. Well, see, that's kind of the thing I was talking about. Like, they're going to look at that. They're going to look at who's using their stuff the most, and especially if they're near a school. I'm assuming if they are. Okay.
Yeah, it's a quarter mile from the junior high school, which is why that library is geared more toward junior high kids. I understand that.
All right. So let's see. Oh, thank you for that follow. Corgis is love orgy. What?
Corgis love orgies. That would be sort of rhymes, but not quite.
I love corgis, so
Close to that.
I have my corgis up today just so we can focus on the interview, because if I had the puppy out,
She'd
I
want to
would-
play.
yeah. So let's see. Question 7. Do you use any online resources from libraries? And if so, what?
No, I never do. And there is a very simple reason for that.
Shame.
It is overly complicated. It is
Oh,
overly complicated.
really?
I've tried to do it before, and I found the system to be very non-user friendly, and it was
And
simply
that's
easier for me
important
to use
information to
Google.
know.
Yeah. It was too complicated. It was too many steps. You had to you got to log in, and then you've got to know exactly what you're looking for. And I had to click all these different buttons and go to different categories. And it was very unuser friendly interface. And so I don't know who designed it. And it looks like it was designed for someone who just knows their way in and out of a library already, because to me, it just wasn't very helpful. And I didn't find it useful. Now, if I'm looking for one specific book and I want to find that and see if my library has it, that's something easy enough to do. But their online resources, online materials, and things like that, not easy enough for me to access, and I didn't want to do it. It was just annoying.
Have you went and talked to people at the circulation desk and say, hey, is there a specific app I should be using? Because most online resources require you use an app. Overdrive, for instance, is one of the popular ones, Hoopla. And what they do is they usually set your account up at the desk, and then you can just sign in with your library card and your username.
Yeah.
and then
Ours
access the
had
app from your
like a
iPad.
library card sign-in thing, but they had their own developed website
Oh dear.
for all of the resources. To my knowledge, they didn't, and I think still don't have their own app. It was more like this very rudimentary, uh, textbook-looking website. Just I think it's like grpl.com or .org or gov or something. But the Grand Rapids Public Library System or the Kent County Public Library System, even not a very user-friendly thing. It's not like going to Barnes and Noble website where I can browse their store and I can look in different categories and they've got suggested readings, and it was nothing like that. It was more like a catalog on a web page.
That's
And
not good.
yeah, no, not good at all. Now I don't know, and that's been several years ago. It's probably like 5 years ago I tried to use it last, and it totally sucked, and I gave up and never went back.
Well, maybe you should reconsider,
check again.
because if
Yeah.
if they're using apps, because a lot of libraries have gone to apps, and they'll have, like I said, Hoopla is one, and with Hoopla, and it's much easier to navigate because these apps are built specifically around user centered navigation to make it as
Something
simple as
user-friendly.
possible, so people like my dad could use it.
Right, and that's important too. And I'm somebody who knows about computers, and I found it daunting to use and annoying.
But that's a very but the thing
inefficient.
is that you brought that up, and that's a very valid point that libraries need to think about going into this. Like, as we keep referring to it in library school, it's the digital age, and technology is only advancing more. So you have to. Some libraries will create a website that's kind of like you have to get through the website in order to get to what you were talking about. It's like a barrier, basically, to protect.
And that's kind of what it felt like.
Right. So a lot of libraries are going away from that, and they're going through these different apps like Overdrive and Hoopla, and there's some others, and they're very, very useful, and they're very user friendly. So after today, I challenge you
To check it
by
out.
the end of this week to check again. And I think you might be pleasantly surprised that they might have updated that, and they might have gone more over to one of these apps that
I'll
are
have to check
super
that
easy
out.
to use. And libraries, even though a lot of them are closed, some of them still have support. A lot of librarians are working from home. So if you have questions, you can email them. You can still ask for assistance, because even if a library is closed, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of libraries across the United States right now are weeding their collections. They're taking advantage of the fact that they're closed.
That makes sense, yeah.
Because if I was in charge of a library, I would probably be like, okay, we're going to practice social distance, but guess what? Everyone has a section. Let's weed this library.
Yeah, and I wonder if maybe some other things that might come out of this situation and the pandemic right now is the ability to have like a bare bones staff and do like book pickups or something where you just have a staff who goes and just grabs some books off the shelves and people come in and pick them up, and they have some way of still being able to do that.
Speaking of that, it was like, I remember seeing this article from like librarians and like even before the 50s, I think it was like the 30s or 40s, were on horseback picking up and bringing books to people.
Yeah, and book delivery services,
And Thorfina says her library is doing something like that.
Oh, that would be really cool.
I don't know if are they using horses, Thorfina, though? Because that would be really cool.
I think that's all Germany has. I don't think they have invented the car yet in Germany. I believe they just use horses and carriages. So.
Okay, that's awesome. So that's thinking about solutions in a time like this. That's important. Okay, so I'm glad I challenged you about the online resources.
I'm going to have to check it out.
I'll check on you on Friday. All right, so we spoke about that. For 8, name your favorite library and explain why it's your favorite. Is that the one with the 4 stories?
Well, actually, no. I think my favorite library that I have been to is the library, and this is going to sound weird. It's the library in Brazil where I lived, in the city of Belo Horizonte. And the reason
You lived in
for that
Brazil.
is it is just the prettiest freaking library I've ever seen. It's got this huge open, like, space and feel to everything. It almost is like a cathedral with books in it. It's that
wow.
pretty. and it has like these huge spaces for everything. It's a little on the old-fashioned side in terms of the looks. It was like kind of 60s style, but it's this big, grand place with
Ooh.
huge shelves, and they even had like those ladders you could climb up that slide back and forth on the walls. And
Oh, wow.
so yeah, it was just this very grand, almost old-fashioned but really cool kind of library, and that's my favorite one that I've been to, at least like visually. And now it was full of a lot of Brazilian literature that I couldn't really read yet, but when I was there, that was like the prettiest and nicest library that I've ever been in, and one of the largest ones I've been in. I've been in a lot of very large libraries in the US.
You'll have to like link it in your chat.
Yeah, I'll
Like,
just see if I can find some pictures of that.
find
because
it
it's
like you might
really
find it on
pretty.
Wikipedia. You might find that library on Wikipedia, or they probably have a
Okay.
library website. And then you should put that in general in your
Yeah.
Discord so we can all take a look at this library that you
Yeah,
love
see if I
so
can get some
much.
pictures. Yeah, it had this like huge, like 2-story window. I don't think it was stained glass, but it was just this giant peaked window, and it was a really pretty library.
That sounds
I don't know,
gorgeous.
I liked hanging out there. It was nice.
My favorite library is when I worked on my first master's degree in history, and it was the Minster Library. And I'll
This in
actually,
England, isn't it? Because you've been to
yes,
some ridiculously gorgeous places. I've seen pictures of like Sassy's like, yeah, I used to live here. It's no big deal. It looks like it's out of like a freaking, I don't know,
postcard.
novel. Yeah, it's like I'm looking at some gorgeous. I
Okay,
don't
and let
know,
me see if I can link it to you
apartment.
guys. Let me see, Minster Library.
This place.
Let me see if I can
Yeah,
link
it's
it.
no big deal. It's just completely painted in gold flank. It's fine. It's totally normal. I lived there. I had a gold toilet seat.
Oh, here it is. It's beautiful. It had one of the oldest map books from like the 1500s, and we got to look at it in
Ooh.
person.
Yeah, that's cool. That is really cool.
And I'll put that in the chat here. So
My
you guys can take a
university
look at it.
library at Grand Valley State University had some really cool, like, old stuff. One of the weird things was that they had one of the first printings of the Necronomicon, and I'm not kidding.
Are
Like
you serious? That's awesome.
Yeah, they had one of like those old printings of it, and it was kept in like it was in glass. You had to wear gloves and all this crazy stuff. I don't know about why you do all that. And it was like sealed in this special room with special temperatures and humidity, and
Yeah, you gotta
it
do
was
that with that stuff.
yeah. And then like to read it or look at any of the older books like that, you had to go in a special room that was just you, and you couldn't take anything in with you, and you had to wear gloves, and there was a can in the room, and you just
Yeah.
got like this one blank table, nothing else. It was and gloves, and I was like, wow, I feel like I'm in prison, but this book is so cool. It's totally worth looking at this.
Yeah, and that's what you have to do with special collections, because like the acid off of your fingers can cause the paper to deteriorate.
Oh, that's why. Okay, yeah. So you don't want to like ruin it.
Yeah, like
That
the
I knew it was
oils.
something. There had to be some reason I was wearing gloves, but it was
Yeah,
cool
but I
though,
loved
anyway.
I loved that library because it was next to the Minster. It used to be the private library of one of the archbishops or whatever that oversaw, and it got converted into a library, and it had the the portable book. You know what you're saying with the sliding library
Yeah,
ladder
with the
and
ladders everything.
yeah,
That's
but I love that library
really
because it
cool.
has so much character in it. And when I
Yeah.
did my dissertation, my first master's degree, it was on Mary Ward, who was a nun during the late 1500s to 1600s when Catholicism was outlawed in United Kingdom. So she had to actually travel abroad.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So I had to look at a lot of religious history and religious books specifically to do with Mary Ward in order to find out more about her, because she's kind of like a lot of people don't know about her. So before I get on that tangent, we're going to go to number 9. Have you ever participated in any library programming? So
Yeah, I was trying really hard to think about that one, and I can't really think of situations in which I did, honestly. When I was little, I didn't really participate in things like story times. As a teenager, most of the libraries near me did not have any sort of things for teens at all. And as an adult, I'm just not interested in. They do offer some things like book clubs and shared reading and things like that, but I struggle in that sort of social situation with strangers around. Uh, it's different if I'm with a group of people that I have met before or that I know and we're discussing literature, but I'm often a little uncomfortable and don't usually voluntarily put myself in situations with people I know absolutely nothing about and discussing stuff openly. I don't usually like to do that.
What kind of
I make too many Trump jokes. People start throwing things at me. It's a problem. No.
So
Covered in tomatoes.
what kind of programming would entice you to want to go to a library for a program?
It's hard to say, honestly. I think if it were something that was a little classier, I don't want to sound snooty, but
You
a lot of
snooty?
the- yeah, a lot. Yeah, no, I'm not snooty at all. I'm totally dressed like this because I'm a normal beer drinking, average golf club swinging golden Joe. Marlboro smoking.
You need to go grab your shotgun and go shooting.
Yeah. Hey man, hang on, man. Hold my beer. I got a book to read. No, it doesn't usually work that way. I think if they had some like classier things, it would be nice. I've also noticed that a lot of the reading choices or like the whatever they're doing, it does tend to revolve around a lot of like the popular books and things where they're like, hey, come to our Sylvia Brown Club. Why don't you come and read, the Da Vinci Code with us? It's stuff I'm not really interested in. But if they had like some more nerd stuff and they were like, come join the Tolkien Roundtable, I'd be like, yeah, let's do this. Let's Tolkien it
So,
up.
like, Flying pointed out that his library had a chess club they ran.
Okay. I have not seen anything like that here, but if we had it, that might be something that I would,
Bye,
be a
Hema.
little
Thank you for
more
hanging out.
interested in.
Well, what's surprising, and a lot of people don't realize this, that like what you said sounds like a really interesting program. You could actually be the person to set and run that program. Most libraries have volunteer coordinators, and you could say, hey, I'm really thinking about starting, I'd like to volunteer, and I'd like to set up this program and create a Tolkien club that I can bring people here to discuss, read, and write about Tolkien. And you could go to the volunteer coordinator and say, hey, this is an idea and this is what I'm interested in, and go from there. I mean, a lot of it is people not realizing that there are libraries out there that want help and they want volunteers and they want new and fresh, interesting ideas. Like one of the things I did, hey, hottie chicken. One of the things that I did at that last library I was talking to that I worked at is that there were no programs for airmen. There was no programs for teens, young adults, and young airmen. And when I say young airmen, it's like I use these acronyms and I forget a lot of people aren't military orientated, but airmen mean young enlisted military members. So we're talking like they just got into the military. They're not allowed to leave the dorms until like their 4th year in, basically in the military.
Oh, okay.
And they have to live in these dorms, and a lot of them don't have cars, but they can walk to the library because it's less than a mile away from where they live on base. It's usually pretty close. Or there's a bus. If it's a big base, they can get on the bus to go there. There was nothing, absolutely nothing for them. And I said, you know what I'd really like to do? I'd like to create a game club. And that was one thing I can say about that former director where she's like, you know what? That's a great idea. It would be wonderful if we did that. So I created a game club. That was board game based. People were welcome to come and play the video games because we had like a teen section that had area where you could play video games. But I created a board club, a board game club, and a lot of people say they try to set up programs, but it never works. And because I market it, I did marketing. I got on social media, which is one of the best things that libraries can use. It's free to get the word out there. And
yeah, I think Facebook groups and Twitter and stuff are really useful.
Yeah, and the reason why it worked is because I told people, I'm like, well, I'd always have a feature game every week, or I would run the game. I ran the game club twice a month on Saturdays, which was great because that's when everybody was off work. It was open to all ages, but it was mostly focused on teens to adults. But I would encourage, like, if a family wanted to come in, they were welcome to go sit down at a table and play a game. I would set it up. We'd have snacks and drinks. I would have the feature games set up. I would read the rules ahead of time to, like, basically when you've ever gone to like a board game convention before, you'll see that they'll have like a prototype of a game. They'll already have it set up. They'll already have somebody there that knows how to play the game. And that makes you want to sit down and play because you don't have to spend the 40 minutes to relearn the game or learn the rules. You can just sit down and play. And one of the big arguments my director said at one point, she's like, I don't understand why you have to oversee it. Why do you have to be there? It's like you have to have a staff member present and volunteers that can run the games. Because she's like, you should just throw games on a table. I'm like, if you put a bunch of games on a table, nobody's going to be interested.
Yeah, you kind of have to facilitate that somehow.
Yeah, so you have to facilitate it and you have to be active. And the main thing also was marketing, making it available. And then we also created a games library so people could check board games out and take them home. So let's see what Anna Corneline's here. My library was all catering to housewives, all 50 Shades and psychic books.
Yeah, no thanks.
It actually got to the point of being kind of anti-intellectual, which was weird because they thought it would scare people off. Thorfina says they wouldn't know if they are allowed to play if they are just there. Exactly, Thorfina. So it's like, the thing is with programming, it's about, you have to have someone that's motivated, that's interested in a topic. Like you saying, I love to do, what was it that you were thinking of?
Me?
Brihtwulf? Yeah.
Oh, I was talking like if you had a Tolkien roundtable discussion of Tolkien literature or something.
So,
that would kind of be my...
All it takes is one person to have an idea, to get behind it, to believe in it, to facilitate it, and also market it. And it's a possibility. And if it was something like, let's say you only met at the library once a month, but the library helped promote that and make the marketing and stuff like that, you would be surprised people would show up. And sometimes all it takes is like, get one friend to go. Like I would get my husband and like 2 of my friends to show up, and 4 of us would be sitting there playing a game, and that's all it took.
And then suddenly other people
to create interest.
Yeah, what are you doing? Yeah.
Offer free snacks too.
I never really thought about volunteering because it isn't something that is talked about much that I've ever noticed. I've never really, maybe there's like a sign somewhere on a wall saying you could volunteer at the library, but there's really nothing that I've ever noticed talking about that opportunity. So I never really even thought about volunteering at a library. I assumed everyone who's there, maybe like you'd go read to kids or something, but everyone who works there, and they're not, like nobody would volunteer at a library. That just never crossed my mind.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of people, even at the library I worked at, that volunteered. And teenagers, it's a great opportunity for teenagers to learn some job skills.
Yeah, that's a good point.
They learn to communicate more effectively, be professional in an environment. Even if they're just putting books away, they're looking at understanding, categorizing, and organizing. I mean, there's a lot that they can, they help customers find a book. There's a lot of stuff that teenagers can use and grow from in order to be helpful in society.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too.
Okay, so that was, I can't wait to hear about you setting up your program at the library.
We shall see. I don't know what the interest level in that is.
And this leads into our next question, by the way, which is, have you ever volunteered at a library and why?
No, and it's because I never really thought that it was a thing. But I mean, now that you mention it, it does make sense. I would have thought that the only volunteering in a library would be people helping out little kids. But now that you talk about, clubs and events and games and broadening it beyond just books, obviously that, that starts to bring up ideas of, why not have a philosophers club at the library with some local people that share that interest, if that's something you're into. So never really thought about it before, but that certainly is a good segue into something that I guess is bigger than I thought it was.
Yes. Hi, Tamazi. Welcome in. We're talking about libraries today, and Tamazi volunteered at my library. He was very helpful.
Ooh, very nice.
Yes. And he would come to Game Club. He was one of my friends I would drag to Game Club. They would drive, him and his husband would drive 45 minutes.
Wow, that's a long way to
That's
go.
called friend dedication there.
Dedication for sure, absolutely.
Because it was a lot of traffic. Okay, so like that was a good segue. So that's something to think about. Everyone should think about, and especially when we start getting into what everyone's discussing and they're calling the new normal. We'll have to see how that impacts libraries, and they might need volunteers when you think about it. So that's something to think about. This is a good question because I think this happens to a lot of people. What was your worst experience in a library? And if you remember it, that says how bad it was.
Yeah, I think it was in my high school. The librarian was, and it was her specifically, just snotty and unhelpful. If you ever wanted something, you were an inconvenience if you didn't find it yourself. And she was like, 50s, maybe 60. And I don't know if she just didn't like doing what she was doing, but I lived in a small town, and in our high school library, she was just like, leave me alone, don't ask me questions. And half the time she was just in an office in the back, and she wouldn't even like come out. You had to, like, hey, can I need something? So I'm not sure what the deal with that was, but I think that a jaded person in a position like that, I suppose it's just like if you have a jaded teacher who hates what they're doing, it's going to ruin your educational experience, at least for that class. And in that library, I never wanted to go in and do anything because she was unpleasant, which made the environment unpleasant, which made it also less useful for me because I never wanted to get help to look for stuff. So the person was my least favorite experience, just because I don't think she liked what she was doing.
Yeah, Thorfina comments on that, and she says, had the same in a bookstore, never went there again. And that brings up a hot topic in library school at the moment, which is preconceptions that people have about libraries and why they don't want to participate in them, go to them. Like when I was speaking earlier about, what was it, like teenagers being marginalized because librarians just don't want to deal with them. Well, they're also looking at it from your perspective, because you said that was what, you as a teen? You remember that?
In my high school, I was, in my high school years.
Because that's a perfect example of that situation where the librarian had that attitude towards that age group. And so that was her response. And so you naturally took that to heart and was just like, well, that can literally put someone off to libraries forever.
Yeah, and if I wasn't such a nerd anyway, I probably wouldn't have gone back to other libraries because I'm like, well, looks like librarians are mostly a-holes. I'm just going to go somewhere.
Oh,
ladies. No book learning.
You be
I'm
quiet.
live in the South.
Shh.
I'm done.
Shh.
I'm moving to Georgia. They ain't got libraries in Georgia. Kidding, Georgia. I'm sorry.
You're going to upset somebody, Brihtwulf. Can't let you loose.
No.
So, yeah, I mean, that's the idea about libraries, that they have to fight two concepts, which is it's just a warehouse of books. It can't be that anymore. And with future library trends and where libraries are going, they're about creating a more of a community space. Like I told you, that bookstore model, making it more friendly, more open, more user-centric versus like the old way with the hardwood tables and chairs and all of that kind of stuff. But the main thing is customer support too. I mean, with automation going in the direction that it is, that cuts back on how many people are at a circulation desk. But I would hope that they would still have reference librarians at, like in the children's section. Available. Yeah. Yeah. And like usually those types of librarians that work in those specific sections is because that is one of their focuses and they love to do that. Like I was not interested in children's studies. I'm gonna just put that there. I have my corgis. That's as close as kids I'm ever gonna have.
Yeah,
and so
I don't mind little kids in like teaching and settings. I could probably be okay with little kids in a library too.
Right.
I don't want to watch them in my home, but I'm fine in a teaching setting. That's not a big deal to me.
But Anna Cordelay says, I love the trend of libraries becoming more community centers, but cleaning all those tasks for takes a year and a half. Jumin is, like, what? I can see what you're saying. Yeah, but it's like, so I'm more like, I would love to do the teen section because I work really well with teens. I've worked at youth centers, schools, and I've always had an affinity for teens because I'm a perpetual teenager at heart. I play video games.
I have a question for you. How do you go about, like, I noticed that you are defying the librarian stereotype here. I see no glasses. Your hair is clearly down.
Yes.
Like what do you do? Like, how do you feel defying the librarian stereotype like that?
I don't want to define it. I want to break it.
There you go.
I'm going to be like Khaleesi. I'm going to break the
wheel.
wheel.
You've already taken off the glasses and shaken the hair out.
It's just it's
done.
here.
There you go.
But I do have my cardigan though, because that's like that's how
that's
librarians feel safe. It's like their safety blanket is their cardigan.
I love cardigans too. Do you think like the personality and things like that are going to be or are already more important for librarians?
I think they're 100% important.
Somebody who wants to sit in the library and work with books. Do you think that the personality and behaviors are more important now?
I think 100% it is. That's I'm like a super
already a thing is important. Okay.
Yeah, like I'm an extrovert. So there are two types of librarians. There's the introvert who like, I just want to be around my books. I don't want to be bothered. I want to be in the back cataloging, or I want to be in the back working at collection development. I don't want to be around people. And then there's me, and I'm just like, I'm all up in your face. I'm up in your grill. We're going to do this. We're going to get stuff done. And I'm also, because that was one of the main reasons why I decided to do librarianship, is because I was working at a library that had terrible leadership. And I saw how incredibly destructive that was. Like, it created this, like, there's this whole concept about a low trust organization and a high trust organization. And it was so low trust. Everybody was trying to backstab each other. Mm-hmm. There was so much drama. There was like I worked with 5 other people. And I'm just like, at one point it wasn't that bad. I had some great coworkers. Yeah, like Tamazi sat here and said, God, your boss was a tyrant.
I see that.
I went through two library directors. The first one almost got fired, and then she retired because she was harassing me. She was horrific to me. She was trying to control me. She would berate me. She was horrific. And so she ended up retiring because she knew that she was on the chopping block. And then there was like somebody that kind of filled in between there, and she was fine. She did a great job. She was trying to do the best she could. And then the latest one, I made the mistake, and I learned a valuable lesson about this. I like to make friends with everybody. I'm a very friendly person. I'm a very loving and caring person. And I tried to make friends with her. She was new to the area. She was really struggling. And I decided to try to make friends with her outside of work. And that was my first mistake. And I trusted her too much, which was my second mistake. And then I started to realize, because I was overseeing the timesheets, the finances, I was in charge of the government purchase cards, that she was just trying to do a lot of dodgy things. She was also breaking laws, like on employment laws. Yeah, she was having people coming and working on a Sunday and not paying them. And I was just like, that's illegal. You can't do that.
Can't do that.
No.
Was this an older person, Mother? Just out of curiosity, was this an older person?
They were
in
their late 50s.
Okay, so yeah, part of that older generation.
And the first one was in her she was in her mid-60s, but she's like, oh, this is my retirement job. So she didn't take it seriously. She didn't have a collection development policy. The second one came in. And the thing is, a lot of people don't realize, like, when you work on a military base, you're working, so it's a military base, Air Force Base library. Plus it serves a community. Mm-hmm. So you have lots of different funding coming in. So you're responsible for all that funding, all that government funding. You can only spend so much money on this specific thing in this specific way, and then you have to trail all that money back. It's very, very complicated. And on top of that, you also have Air Force regulations that you have to
Oh,
meet.
yeah. That's got to make it even more more complicated.
Yeah, so like my main thing was, and I saw everything that was happening, and I was like, I want to be a good leader, and she wasn't, and she harassed me, and I had to quit my job. And I loved my community. I loved everything I did. I became the senior library technician. I went from working the circulation desk. I had volunteered there first, worked the circulation desk I volunteered for 6 months, got a full-time job, worked 2 consecutive years full-time circulation desk, and then my last 6 months there, I was promoted to senior library technician. And I learned the importance of good leadership. I learned the importance of a high trust, low trust organization. And I learned the difference between a toxic work environment and what isn't. And it was,
I find really interesting, and this kind of relates to what you're talking about, is that I think with a lot of professions, it is going to be, and it already is turning into, more about a profession, about something you enjoy, something you want to contribute to, rather than a job. And it sounds like a lot of the problems that you had with people were ones where this was a job and it wasn't you doing what you enjoyed doing. But I feel like that is also a really big changing point in our society right now. And it sounds like this is not just a job for you. This is something that you really care about. And that's why you're doing it.
yes, I have a passion for it.
And I think that's really important in anything people are doing right now. And, I would encourage everyone to do exactly what you're doing and do something where you like to talk about it, you care about it, you want it to succeed, you want it to be great. Because when you have something that's just another job, you're only there collecting paycheck, and that time is just a waste of your time to you. But I think I would assume when you walk into a library, you're not feeling like you're wasting your time.
No, it was one of the hardest decisions. You face decisions in your life. You're like this, you have like a list of hardest decisions you had to make. It was one of the hardest decisions I had to make because I absolutely love my community. And when she would say, well, I'm just here for a paycheck, and she literally would say that to me. And she didn't care about the collection. She didn't care about the programming. She didn't care about the people. And I couldn't do that. Like
why would you want to?
Yeah, because I should have quit like months before I did because the abuse was that bad. Like Tamazi pointed out that they were there for a game club once, and she was screaming at me so loud in her office they could hear her out in the game club area. Yes.
Awkward.
I know. And I still went out there and I sat down and I was running a role-playing game, and and the patrons were like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yes, we're going to finish this." I was like in tears.
Don't worry about it.
I'm like, I don't start a role-playing game and not finish it.
So, but I think that's going to help where things are going to. It's going to be less about people trying to make a job out of it and really redefining, improving, and moving libraries forward.
Yeah, and it's like you need to have and I have the same philosophy that like I wanted to go in a career where I woke up every day and I couldn't wait to go to work because it's half your life. That's 8 hours or more out of your day. Yeah, and you have to enjoy your life. And it's like you shouldn't wake up miserable every day and unhappy. And it's like, to me, that's more important than anything in the world. I'm a very giving person, so when I wake up and I know that I've done something, or I brought a smile to that child's face, or I helped a teenager, and I've had teenagers come back to me years later going, I can't believe how much you helped me, just having the game club there, or, oh, Miss Will, when you helped me here at the school, you made a big difference in my life, and you changed my life.
You're basically a form of a teacher. It's the same with teaching, and you experience the same thing.
Yeah, and so that was one thing I was thinking about going to teaching, but then I was like,
Man.
It's a lot of work. I have a lot of friends that are teachers, but yeah. So... And number 13, question 13, have you ever encountered, well, we just talked about that. Actually, you answered it yourself. Have you ever encountered a rude librarian and how that play out?
Those two were kind of the same thing for me when you had talked about those. So I kind of like drew them in one into the other. And that's why it was a negative experience. It was the rude person. It was significant. And so I was saying, I think it's so much more important to have the people who care about their job like you, rather than some angry, angsty old lady in there, or man, or old man. This happens to normally be ladies from my experience as my child.
That's so true. Yeah. Okay, Okay, so for number 14, what rules should be enforced in a library and why?
Now, this one I thought was a really interesting question because I am I've always wondered about the noise level as an example there.
Mm-hmm.
Now I know you don't, if people are reading and or trying to research something, you don't want like loud noises, but sometimes I've also felt like libraries are like a funeral home at some points where I
That's
go
so
in
true.
there and it's like the land of the dead. I feel like I've crossed the river Styx into the land of forbidden sound or something, but it's kind of awkward and almost foreboding that it's so quiet and silent, and if there's not even so much as like pleasant music or something. But again, that's where I feel like that bookstore theory of yours, well, not that it's yours, but the first time I've
Hey,
heard
I'll
about it
take
is
it.
from you, so I'm going to give this credit to Sassy for it.
Whoop whoop.
That bookstore theory and style is, I think, much more pleasant. And I think that as far as rules go, I would love to see a little bit of a relaxing on the ultra silence thing and make it a little more pleasant. Put on some sort of quiet, generally appreciated sort of music that is quiet enough that you can still focus, but not dead silence, which can be eerie to some people, myself included.
Yeah, it can be a
Um,
bit intimidating, I think, when you're walking in and everyone's so quiet, you're afraid a pen's going to drop and they're going to all stare at
yeah.
you like,
As far as, I mean, a lot of the other rules, I think that it varies from one library to another. But one thing I would love to see drastically changed or go away
mm-hmm.
is fines for overdue books.
Right.
As a poor kid, when I was growing up, I literally couldn't pay them. And if I was a little late on a book or something, sometimes I would rather like hide it and pretend like I didn't know where it was rather than like return it and get told how bad my late fees were. Even when it was like 25 cents and I'm in first grade, you know, I felt bad asking my dad for a quarter because my book was late. And that was, to me, that felt like a lot. But back in 1985, it might have been a lot. I don't know.
Yes. Well, to a
So
kid,
it
that's
kind of
still going to be
sucked.
intimidating. It's going to make you not want to go to the library because you're afraid of
Right.
being in trouble.
What if I'm late, or what if, yeah, or I already turned one in late. And now maybe I had like three books I was reading, one for class and a couple I thought were fun. And shoot, they're several days late. And now I owe like $3 that I
What
don't
about
have.
I have
And
an
now I can't go.
alternative?
Right. I can't go back to the library. I can't get more books. And not only can I not go to the library, I can't go to any in my whole city because they're all part of the same system. So fines for late books, and I understand why they do it as a deterrent to not keep them overdue. I think really it only punishes poor kids, and that may be like a non-friendly thing for a librarian to hear, but I really don't like uh, late fees for books as a punishment. There, I don't know what the alternatives are, but I do know that is or can be at least deterring for poor kids like myself when I was little.
I agree. You know what would be a nice alternative? Something that, what if people have the option to either pay or they can volunteer?
Now that I would have done if they're like, well, hey, you can spend 30 minutes because you're $3 short. You can put books away and help us organize stuff or something. And I would not have been as scared of that. I would have been like, oh, 30 minutes after school or 30 minutes or whatever. Yeah, that's cool. And then I can get more books, and I would have been okay
Yeah.
with that. Because the money is, your time, especially as a kid, you get plenty of time, but
Yeah.
money isn't always easy to come by, especially for
And it
kids.
teaches responsibility in a good way, and it might
Yes,
encourage them to
in a
be like,
helpful
wow,
way.
I love libraries, I want to just
Yeah, this
volunteer
volunteering was
regardless.
actually really fun. I liked putting books away with Sally the librarian. We chatted about Pokemon for 30 minutes or whatever. That might be the little kid's feelings about it. She's actually really nice, and I'm going to come back here. So that's a way to make, a sort of deterrent still if the kid doesn't want to waste their time,
Hmm.
but also doing something in a meaningful way and not tying it to money, something that a lot of kids don't have.
Right, because in a lot of when libraries look at collection development and they look at purchasing new books, part of that purchase for the year of whatever their budget is, they're already accounting for the fact that they know a lot of items are just not going to be returned. So,
But I feel like maybe that wouldn't be as much if you didn't have the late charges. If you did something like what you're saying, maybe more people would return their books and not just keep them out of feeling bad or not knowing what to do.
yeah, and so I think that would give people an alternative. I mean, that's just an idea I had, but
Yeah, it's one idea, but I think other ideas are needed because
I
I don't
agree.
like late fees. It's the same thing with like school lunches and things like that, where this kid didn't have the money to pay, or technically their parents didn't have the money to pay, so no food for you, little Billy.
That's
I'm not a big
terrible.
fan of putting money burdens.
I used to
on
love my
children.
hot lunch.
Yeah, right. Give me my flat cardboard pizza and
I
my
was gonna
giant
say!
chocolate chip cookie. Yeah, the chocolate chip cookie the size of my head, and I'm gonna eat those.
The cardboard
Yeah,
pizza.
and that's not a fair burden to put on children. You shouldn't be putting capitalist money woes on your 10-year-old.
100% no. Let's see
Let's
what
not
people
do
are
that.
saying here. Flying saying, I like it when libraries have designated quiet areas. And Thorfina says, some areas extra for shutting up. What?
So like a room maybe
Yes.
that like shuts
A quiet
its door
room.
and has some soundproofing where
For
people
studying.
who need pure silence can study or read, but maybe like a Barnes and Noble-esque classical music playing and I'm listening to some Chopin and reading this book casually. I would love that. You give me you give me coffee, some quiet Chopin, and a comfy chair.
Then you're
and I'll
never
sit there
leaving.
all damn day. I will sit there the whole
And
time.
you might even,
and
like,
I will read my book.
like lead
Yeah.
that program you were talking about.
Right. Sit and talk about Tolkien, drink some coffee, sit in my comfy chair. That is a pleasant environment for literature to be experienced.
Right.
Sitting on a hard wooden chair with a hard wooden table.
It just makes you want to
propping
leave.
your elbows up.
You're just
Not
like,
a
I'm
fun
out of
place.
here.
Yeah, you're not having a good experience with your literature. It should be comfy and enjoyable, not a chore. Literature doesn't need to be a chore. We've almost turned it into it by the
Yeah, I agree.
variation of cramming literature down kids' throats in school and making our libraries cold boxes.
You call them
But wait,
funeral homes, don't you?
Yeah, it feels like a funeral home sometimes. Seriously, it's like dead silent and nobody's looking at you, and there's some guy crying in the corner. And,
Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
it's sad.
You
I
crack
wanna do
me up. Okay, if you had to build the perfect library, this leads into this next question.
that. Yep.
What would it be like and why?
Yeah, so I would kind of like what we were just describing, where I do enjoy larger open spaces. I don't like cramped libraries either, where like it's just buttloads of shelves of books and then like these crammed in little tables and chairs. I don't really like that very much. What I think would be better is a more comfortable, enjoyable environment, because I think that literature needs to be enjoyed. When you're
Yes, I agree.
the experience needs to be an enjoyable one, or you're not really going to be able to appreciate what you're reading because you're uncomfortable and it's unpleasant, and you're naturally going to associate that experience with what you're reading. So
That is
there's
so
a difference
true. That's a
between
good point.
and reading Romeo and Juliet in a comfortable recliner with some lovely music playing and a tasty beverage next to you versus reading Romeo and Juliet in a silent, closed room on a wooden chair with your elbows propped up. It's not going to be, you're not going to like that, And so you're going to have at least some sort of subconscious association. So I think comfortable seating, options for somebody who does want pure silence versus, maybe some light music,
Right.
and just a more casual, comforting environment rather than this sort of almost sterile funeral home environment that we have
With
in a lot
staggering bookshelves that feel like they
Yeah,
could just
like-
crumble in on you.
Yeah, everywhere, and it's all just like the seating is crammed together. I think it needs to be a little more open and casual. A lot of workspaces are taking similar approaches too now, where they're open plans, more comfortable seating, wider spaces, things like that, because I think in general human beings are not comfortable in cramped, tiny, cold environments. We don't thrive there. We can't be as creative. We can't do all of those things that we do, and we can't enjoy the things we enjoy when
Yeah.
your environment sucks.
And that's very true. And I mean, that's like back to what I was talking to you about earlier with the collection development policies. Is it's not just about the items in the library. It's also about how you're going to develop it, how are you going to organize it, what's the space like, how are people utilizing the space. And like they even talked about like different heat sensors that libraries have put up to figure out where are the hot spots in the library that people are like going towards and hanging out in.
What's drawing them there?
Yeah, and like being aware of those kinds of things. And like that's one of the new technologies they've been talking about. So
Well,
I mean,
even like a similar thing with marketing and stuff that I studied in university, where they talk about leading or guiding a customer through
Yes.
an experience. And it's similar. I think it needs to be similar for libraries. You need to provide some sort of focus for them to lead them in, to show them.
Well,
the
think
places
about
that they might
IKEA.
want. Yeah.
IKEA.
Yeah. There you go. Or again, I say, well, I mean, at least our Barnes and Noble here, the one that's close to me, absolutely lovely. Big open, really good high up signage without obstructed view from too many high bookshelves.
Yes.
The general shelves that are not on the outer walls are lower. They're easier to see over, and they're very clearly labeled by category, which makes it easier to find than trying, look
To understand either the Dewey system or the Library of Congress system. They're both
right, and they're complex. They're catalog systems. They're not accessible to your average person. And I think that going forward, libraries need to be more accessible to your average person, both in environment and appearance as well as organization. I enjoy going into my local Barnes and Noble. It is an enjoyable experience. There's quiet music playing. There's a Starbucks in there with coffee. There's the lovely smell of books, and it's very open. I'm not crowded by other people, nor by products like books and things like that. So I feel like I'm not closed in on.
Yeah, so that goes back to that, what I told you is that new approach that some libraries are looking at, which is the bookstore model for libraries. And you can really tell the difference. If you walk into a library that has taken on that bookstore model, you immediately feel less intimidated. You feel more relaxed. You feel more invited into that environment as well.
Yeah, I would like that.
So that's true. All right, so that was a good question. And now I had one question I added at the last minute.
Oh, no. No, it's fine.
So,
don't worry about it.
Why should society care and invest in libraries?
Yeah, I think it's an important question. And actually, libraries, like I said, are important. I was very serious when I was saying that libraries and librarians are sort of the keepers of the base of humanity. They're the keepers of our knowledge, and they're providing it not for storing it for the future or something, but for you now, so that people who want to learn about whether it's something like history, where you want to know why events of the past have made things the way they are now, or technology, where you want to know how did microcomputers and microprocessors get started, and you have all of that knowledge in books, and that is how we store those things. That is how we use them. And doing so is how we move forward. And libraries are an important piece of that. They are the foundation of all of that. Libraries and schools. Let me also say schools.
You're like, schools count. Let's just throw them in there real quick.
By the way, teachers are awesome. Kiss your local teacher. His name is me. Anyway, teachers are awesome too. Librarians and teachers, which is why I said you're kind of like a teacher with books. You're a book teacher. You're the book teacher. You have the knowledge and the access to all of this information, all of this, both literature and reference materials. And it's necessary for our growth moving forward to maintain and utilize that information. And if it is either ignored or destroyed, or like abandoned or neglected, I think that causes communities and those systems to suffer. If schools and libraries are in bad shape, it's going to make the communities that utilize those things in bad shape too, because they can't learn properly, they can't advance, they can't grow properly without the knowledge, without the resources to do it. Which is why a lot of these inner city areas have such poor. It's one of the reasons why they have such poor performance. That the environment is poor, the quality of education is poor, the quality of books and resources that they're getting is poor in the libraries, and we need to uplift that and maintain those and take them seriously in order to keep pushing forward. And then, like you said, changing
Yeah.
collections, you call them, changing the collections, adding new stuff, updating, improving. That needs to be a part of a lot of things, but most importantly, our education and library systems. That's
I agree.
where everything else kind of has a foundation. So yeah, it's super important actually.
Okay, great. So did you have any questions for me?
Well, I had asked you a few of them while we were going because I thought, oh, this question will fit well here, and this question will get fit well here. Um, I'm trying to think if there was anything else that I had left from the questions. Honestly, my thoughts, which you've already discussed as we were going through this, are where are libraries going,
Yes,
and how do we
definitely.
determine that? Because but that's the whole point of what we've already been talking about, and you've had
Right.
many points about that. But I think that they need to evolve, and
I
the
agree.
ideas on how to do it are going to need to come from some innovative younger librarians who can see past sort of the traditions of the old stuff to make it
I'm
more
like,
interesting for your layperson like myself who enjoys literature and enjoys books and learning, but finds libraries either dated or daunting, and it's just not very fun. But it's exciting to hear a lot of the stuff that I'm learning just today about processes that you have learned, things that you have developed, things that you have planned for the future, and how that's evolving. I think that's really important. So, I mean, you've kind of already answered my
yay,
questions
I
on
did
that
a
because I
good
was like, well,
job.
where are libraries going? What are they going to be? And what do they mean for me in my community? Like, why would I even bother going? But apparently, we just need to redefine that and kind of bolster our use and purposes of libraries. That community space thing, for example, I think is fantastic.
Yes,
I
I
think
mean
it's a
that's
great
the
idea that I didn't really think about, like using it for more than just sitting and reading a book.
yeah, it shouldn't be a place to just read books. It should be a
Yeah.
place that's it's like you talk about community centers. Usually even community centers you got to pay to use. A library you don't have to
Hmm.
pay to use.
No, it's a public service.
And it's like you can create, there's so much programming you can do for teens. I talked about a game club. At our library, we had a crafternoon for kids and teenagers to do crafts together. We had STEM. A lot of libraries are getting all this STEM stuff for free, that's being donated to them, or they're getting money raised for it for like using 3D printers. But you have to create programs to promote the materials. Like
Yeah.
it's not just about, like you're saying, just book clubs. You can't do that. You need to have, like, you could have like a senior day where you could do bingo at the library if people want to play bingo, or there's lots of
Yeah.
different interests and ideas out there. It's just about people being proactive, creating the programming, facilitating the programming, and the one thing that a lot of people don't realize, which is the most important, is promotion.
Yeah.
Because
Do you think that we need to help that by increasing the funding for libraries? One thing that I know from like in my profession as a political scientist, I focus on developing countries and infrastructure particularly, and the key infrastructure is always services, including education. But honestly, now previously a lot of the research I've done, I never really included libraries standing alone
mhm.
as an option. But now that I'm thinking about it, I would recommend also libraries as this key infrastructure to providing a foundation for a successful community and
Yes.
society. Do you feel like libraries are underfunded right now?
Well, I think it's a hard thing to know, because it's like every library's funding is going to be different. For instance, like I worked on a base, and it was really underfunded. This library
Mhm.
needed huge like the gates were falling apart. The ILS was falling apart. You're looking at, like, they needed to invest about $30,000 to $50,000 to get the technology up to date. The computers in the computer lab were falling apart. The printer was falling apart.
Mhm.
I even wrote like a 15-page paper in one of my classes saying, "Hey, this is the technology update that you need to make." And she was just like, "Well, we'll never get the funding for that." And I'm like, "Well,
Yeah,
this is the changes you need to make. And and a lot of times it's also, funding is always going to be a concern, but there's lots of avenues to use, to advocate. There's fundraisers, there's grants, there's scholarships, but it's about motivation. And I think it's also important to look at programming that costs nothing. Like
just like volunteer run and the gaming thing, and
like the game club. We didn't, at one point we owned no games. I brought all of my games in from home, and gamers would just show up with piles of board games.
Right, yeah.
And bring them in. And then
it's an option too.
So it's
I
like
just think that, as a valuable part of the infrastructure, it sounds like more consistent funding needs to happen. But, this is America, and a lot of people are all like, don't you take my money. They don't want even a 0.1% tax increase, even though it would drastically help their society. Although, again, that is also changing. That's more of an old-fashioned thought. So, I mean, I hope, or would hope, that social spending, social investment, including education and libraries, will be a part of our future. I hope so, anyway.
Me too. I mean, this is the thing.
Consistent funding, and you wouldn't have to rely on a bake sale.
A bake sale. Well, I think another important aspect of that is if we're looking at the digital age and future trends, do we really need to be buying physical books as much as we have been in the past? Should we be reutilizing that to say, well, if we're going to turn this into community space, perhaps we should be investing more money in programming instead of just items for people to check out, or putting more of our budget towards digital services.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
where you don't have to maintain a digital book. You don't have to worry about it falling apart, or if someone doesn't return it.
And somehow you have a deal with your local library, you can read some of those books. And then when you're done, you hit a button and it goes back into their inventory.
Yeah, and
awesome.
Yeah, and when you think about it, like almost everyone has a mobile phone. So it's like technology isn't even an issue. And there's government programs that give people free mobile phones. So you can read from your phone. So it's like if you just provide more digital services, you can make up for that, for the physical book that needs physical books fall apart. You use them. People don't return them. They get damaged. But with a digital, if you're going more on a heavier side of digital collection, that's less maintenance. Yeah. So, you have to really, you have to look at, like I said, like when you look at a collection development policy, you look at a library policy, you have to look at who you're serving. If you have a higher age community where they would never use digital services, then why would you do that?
Yeah, that's true. I guess if it's like an elderly area, you're not going to necessarily do that. They don't even have like a tablet they know how to use or something.
Yeah, my dad. Bless his heart.
I do love the smell of books. I do love book
Me
smell.
too.
I collect books, and
me too.
That smell. I like physical books, so yeah.
Yeah, and I agree. And I mean, that's something to think about. And that was one of the last questions. I think I brought it up to you in the beginning before we started because we were practicing, but also to the community. One of the biggest questions I got asked in my collection development class, it was the last question from our discussion, was, what is a library without books? If it's a total digital library, then what is it? Right. And going forward, we have to consider that, and we have to think about that.
I think like things like technology and gaming, that's an excellent avenue, frankly. And you would get so many more kids in there, and it would excite them about not only the aspects of the technology and gaming that are there, but also reading literature and other stuff that's involved in the library. So I can only see positives with it, frankly.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of technology they're not using, and that was one of the things to look at. Like, Twitch is a great service. Libraries could be using that right now during COVID to say, okay, these are our latest books we got in. They could be doing tutorials live over Twitch to let people in the community interact and say, I have a question. Like you were talking about the complicated process in which to get into digital services. What if you had a librarian on Twitch saying, today I'm doing a tutorial on Twitch on how to do this.
Our app. Yeah, that would be cool.
And then what they can do is they can upload that and export that to YouTube as well. And then, but you're having that.
In general, it's got a lot of applications.
And it's free.
Yes.
And library, like people, if they want to promote their library, well, guess what? They can subscribe to their channel. They can.
Yes, that's a good point.
They can donate bits. So that's an easy way to do huge donations to the library without all the red tape. I'm sure they would find red tape to put there, but that would be a way to like set up an account to help promote the library. You want to promote the library? Here, we're going to do a marathon reading on Twitch and show up and support us, support your local library.
Yeah, I think it's really exciting to see what might be coming.
Yeah, so that's the reason why, I really wanted to interview content creators. Thank you so much, Brihtwulf, for joining me today. It's been a wonderful conversation. I hope you've enjoyed it. So, I'm hoping that by doing this week, I want to bring awareness to not only libraries, but I want to bring awareness to libraries of the application of Twitch and how important it is and how much it can help libraries reach their community more effectively if they have this great interaction they can have with their people at the same time that they're doing these things for the libraries. So it's something to think about in the future, I think.
Yeah, I'll definitely be keeping an eye on like what happens, particularly after this whole pandemic issue and where we go moving forward with a lot of things, including education, libraries, all that. There's plenty of time to think about it with, especially here, our summer has already, the school year is done. So there's a lot of planning, I think, that needs to happen. It's going to be interesting to see what we do.
I know. And I'm going to be writing a paper about it actually. So
awesome. Hey, you should share that.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to be bored to tears.
How long is it? It's a 30-page dissertation on.
That's not going to be a dissertation. It's probably going to be somewhere around 20 pages.
No. Yeah, not that bad, but maybe.
So, all right. Well, I'm going to wrap up my stream. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to be switching over to my other things. So it was lovely talking to you.
I appreciate it.
I appreciate it. And anytime you want to just talk about libraries, you know where to find me.
Yes, I will look you up.
Okay. All right. Bye.
Bye.
All right. Oh, my camera's not working. Whoopsie daisy. Sorry about that, guys. Let me see if I can get it to come on. It might not since I was... Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to end it there since, YouTube did not like that. Anyways, sorry guys that you can't see my face. It's because I switched from Discord to OBS. So I'll remember that for tomorrow. Yeah. So everyone have a great day. Thanks everyone. KJ, thanks for saying great interview. I really appreciate the compliment. Thanks so guys for coming in. I'm really sorry that I'll have to remember that for tomorrow when I finish my interview. Tomorrow, I'm going to be interviewing... Yeah, at least there's sound, right? Tomorrow, I'll be interviewing the game mechanic about libraries. Yes, thank you, Thorfina. You have a lovely day, too. I would look at rating somebody, but I think since we're just talking about libraries, I'll just take a quick peek. Let's see what people are up to. Sorry, you guys can't see me. Yeah, since we were just talking about libraries, we're just going to end it there on this note. And thank you, everyone from Brihtwulf's community for coming out. I can see why Brihtwulf got a second camera now. So I'm just ending it on this. But anyways, guys, have a lovely day. Thank you so much for coming out. I will see you around and hopefully see you tomorrow for another interview with the game mechanic. And Friday is Skyrim Grandma interview. So that would be lovely to see you guys. And then Thursday, if you're interested in being part of a community game, I'm going to be playing a big game of Talisman. So if you're interested in signing up for that, hit me up on my general Discord or hit me up in a direct message. But this is so weird, my camera not working. So anyways, guys, I'm going to end my stream there. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. I'm waving. I'll see you guys later.